I'll call the meeting to order. The first thing is to act on the agenda.
I move that we act on the agenda as written.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to act on the minutes from both the February 8th and February 12th meeting.
I move that we accept the meeting minutes as written.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any public comment on anything not on the agenda?
I know you guys have SDRs on there. I want to chat about that, but if you want me to wait, I can.
Yeah, we'll wait till it's the second and old
Sure.
business. Yeah, sounds good. So the first thing is the road commissioner's report. I talked with Charlie and Chris this morning, and Charlie and the guys posted the roads today. Obviously, mud season's here.
Right?
And also Charlie wanted to let us know he's started the research on the new 10-wheeler.
Okay.
Called a couple neighboring towns that have similar terrain, asked how they like the different brands compared to what we had.
Mm-hmm.
Called a couple of places. Some truck companies do a municipal type of truck. Other companies only make one truck. It is what it is. It's there. So he's going to continue research, but wanted to let him know that he started looking. It's a long process.
Right, yeah. Because it's not like you get it overnight.
Yeah,
So,
and prices will be a long time to collect also. So that's all I have for there. He said everything else is in order. They hauled in a little material, he said, to have stockpiled for repairs for mud. So
I think this has got to do with highways. Are we did we kind of table the whole discussion about reclassifying roads? Is there any more
we're gonna re-look at that in the spring. We're not
because
quite
we
there.
have to revisit Israel
We do, but we're
Road
gonna
because
revisit all of that in the spring.
Yep.
Like it's even though it feels like spring.
yeah,
We
did.
because we did tell them that
Yes.
it was a temporary.
we decided to wait until
To
the
the
plow
end.
season
Yeah,
was
yeah.
over, and
Right.
that's usually mid-April,
Yeah,
end of
yeah.
April.
Okay.
So
Yep. So it's not been forgotten.
Something
Nope.
not to
And
forget.
with so many roads and with so many roads being rebuilt because of the flood, do you or does Charlie foresee needing a lot of extra material, or is because
this is just like he was talking about the stone for the mud.
right?
When the mud comes to the surface, it gets bad in different spots.
Because we redone.
Oh yeah, the frost
It'll
still
still
gets there,
continue
yeah. And the traffic, there's a lot more traffic on the roads. They knew it was coming, like, for example, on my road, Green Mountain Power put 4 big trucks over my road this morning. So they knew it was coming, so they got out there and got it done before things
Yeah.
started to break up, so. But that's what they just hauled in stuff to have it ready because the pit's only open certain hours and
Yeah.
they need to fix things when it needs to be fixed.
I just wondered maybe with it. It was wishful thinking.
And it
Yeah.
feels like an
Maybe some
early
of
mud
it will.
season.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for it to be raining in 55 or 56,
Yeah.
I guess we're almost to spring, but we're a good 2 weeks out, right? But on the calendar. So that's a little bit,
There's still winter. That's the.
I know.
So, and yeah, that's all I had for that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
And then under old business, first thing is the GMUSD seat. Did Scott? I know that he decided to stay to rescind his resignation, and Ron was good with that. That if Scott house sold, he would step in. That's the way I took the last email that I read.
That's the way I took it as well.
Yeah.
There was a slightly undertone sarcasm article in the Chester Telegraph just now about
I'm
it.
taking my information from their emails to
Yeah,
us.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the points that was made is that Andover might, if the seat were to become empty in the middle of the year, Andover might not, the board itself might have the power to be the person to appoint, not Andover.
I'd like to look into like exactly the statute
Right,
because they
so I-
gave a timeline, but it's like I don't know that that's exactly correct, and it very well could be. But they made it
Whatever.
sound like if a select board didn't reappoint somebody in a certain amount of time, then it went
Yeah.
to the board. But it seemed a little skewed to me too.
Yeah, it's theoretical
yeah.
at this point, so.
But he rescinded his resignation is what
Okay.
he did. So he
Perfect.
actually still was in his term. So he
Right.
didn't.
Good.
And he said he had a long conversation with Ron about
Yeah, that's what I understood
his
too.
plan, and that if Scott's house sold tomorrow, he'd be willing to step in if the board appointed him.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
So that's all I have for that.
Yep.
So now we're on to short-term rentals, and we could start with your comment if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I have your name first?
Yeah.
Kelly Gibson.
Okay.
Andover Selectboard. I came and spoke to you guys, I guess it's almost a year and a half now, maybe November of year ago.
Right.
22, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said then, and I still believe now, you know, you guys are gonna do what you're gonna do. Just ask that it be fair and, you know, take into account homeowners' rights and all the things. And I've seen your guys' discussion. I've read a lot of different things around, and I've also during this time, I've researched a lot of the stuff, legal stuff, spoke with attorneys, done all the stuff to make sure that I'm educated properly. And I've spoken to some short-term renters in Andover. And we've been discussing this obviously because of the possible changes. Some wondering what's going on, some having no idea and asking others. And we've kind of, some of us, not all of us, some of us got into a discussion about it. And everybody's pretty much on the same page. You know, hey, we understand registries type thing, this and the other thing. But as we all know, certain places have gone to extremes, and some of them are in court, and there's other ones that are going to court. And I know an attorney that's going to court on one of the other ones nearby here. And, you know, I'm hoping to avoid that, and we're all hoping to avoid that. And it's not a threat, it's just saying we just want to make sure that the rights that are due us are treated as such. And nobody's looking to do that. We're looking to say, hey, let's do something fair that you guys come up with or the town comes up with, and then we go from there. With that being said, if they were things that the town did that were egregious for rights, then obviously we have to do what we have to do. Everybody has to do that, no matter who it is and what you're talking about. You know, I was at the meeting, the last meeting, when you guys had the meeting
And the other,
in here, yeah. And, you know, and I've gotten to know Hank, so I know Hank. Yeah, he's a good dude. I mean, he's like my father-in-law, so I love the guy. But, you know, that hysteria or that kind of craziness of the yelling and we got to do this and we got to do that and all that. I mean, I get that. I understand that. But I don't, you know, I'm hoping that doesn't come into play of what people do. And I know you guys, you know, we're discussing it pretty fairly, trying to say you're trying to be fair and everything. My only thing is, you know, a couple of the comments that have been made, there was a couple that make it and said, the reason you guys have to do this is this, what's going on right now with short-term renting is illegal as it stands. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There's a court case in Vermont from 2012. And it was Green Isles, I believe. Let's see here. Grand Isle, Tours versus Grand Isle. And the Vermont Supreme Court came up and their decision was that a short-term rental is not a change of use. Because in their argument, you could look into cases, Tours versus Grand Isle. And they said that families are still going in there, whether it be friends or whether it be a family thing. Nobody's changing the use of it, but their ruling on it when they overturned the court, they said that it's not a change of use. So that comes from the Vermont Supreme Court in 2012. The other thing too is that they said is that if you charge rent for it, that doesn't change the use, and it doesn't make that considered commercial, and then it's a different thing. So, you know, they ruled on some of these things that I know people are screaming about in these meetings that if you have it, that's the case. So I'm not saying that you guys are going that way or gonna go that way, and I know it's gonna be on the vote for March 5th for a conditional use. Frankly, if it does go through that way, which, you know, if it does, it does. But I would argue, and I think the law supports that, and the attorneys that I spoke to, and the attorney that's handling the one up in Burlington has told me that it would grandfather everybody that's currently doing it because it's not a change of use. I'm not gonna die on that hill, and nobody that I talk to is gonna die on that hill. But I guess when, in some of the discussions, you guys have said, well, this is phase one, or the zoning, the conditional use is kind of zone one, then we're gonna go, or phase one, then we might do other things after that. I guess that's the stuff that kind of concerns some of us, is where you guys wanna go and what you wanna do, as far as that goes. And again, you guys can do what you guys want to do. That being said, I just don't want to go down that road where it becomes contentious. Nobody does. And I said that from the first time I came here. I just want to be able to do the things that are allowed by homeowners' rights and what the current law allows. I know some of the other towns have talked about treating out-of-staters or non-hosted versus hosted differently. And I don't know if that's going to make its way here, but there's 2 federal court cases on that you can't discriminate between non-residents and residents under the Commerce Clause of Article 1 of the Constitution. That's already happened. It happened in other parts of this country. So there's things like that that are out there that are in place. It doesn't mean that a town can't pass it, but then it just starts to get ugly, and then people have to enforce their rights and all of that. I'm hoping to avoid all of that. And I think, at least so far, it doesn't sound like anybody's going crazy. But there is a faction in this town, with all due respect to them, they believe that if you guys wanted to, you could just shut down STRs completely. And you should, some of them think. I get that. And I've got a neighbor on my road who's been very vocal to me, but I've had no problems with my STR. And one of the ones that was related to having a problem is on my road, and I've spoken to him at length, and he doesn't know where that's coming from, but it is what it is. So the other thing that comes into play, and you guys fired around some different things if you have a fee aside from the zoning. Aside from that, you guys were talking about fees, and you guys threw around 300, 500, all that. Having that as part of a yearly fee. My only comment on that is, and it's a statute in Vermont, is whatever fees that are charged have to cover the expenses that you have. So I know there is a town locally here that's hiring somebody, and I think their salary is $50,000, and then with other expenditures, they're saying that's going to be $70,000. So they're taking their STRs, figuring what the fee is to cover the $70,000, which is legally allowed. But if you just have a fund, hypothetically, if it's $500, and hypothetically, if you have 20 STRs, that's what, $10,000. My only question would be, and I think legally correct, because that's what the Vermont statute says, it says that all fees and charges set by the Board of Selectmen shall be reasonably related to actual costs. The Board of Selectmen have sole authority for setting all fees, charges, and user fees related to town government, except those prescribed in state statute, and so on. But that's in there. So I guess my only comment would be there is if you guys are going to come up with a fee, I would say, okay, the fee's there, but I would also say, what are we covering? And I know it might take time to do a registry, but my understanding is you're not hiring anybody, or not looking to hire anybody. Maybe you'll change your mind. So you'll have things there. So what does that fee then do to follow the statute to make sure that STR owners, are treated the same as what they should be as far as the fees go? So, those are some of the concerns that some of us have had. Nobody's wanted to die on the hill on this. We want to be cooperative, do everything right, fires, extinguishers, all the safety stuff, which in my opinion is the more important thing, is all the safety stuff. Nobody wants anything to happen to anybody in any of our homes. The septic thing, I understand that too, but so that's just kind of the feeling that some of us have. And I'm not speaking on behalf of them, but I'm speaking from having talked with them. We kind of have the same thing. So, but the one thing on the zoning change, the grandfather thing, and I know, was it Joe? Made it clear that it wasn't grandfather, but Joe's wrong. I mean, I've got an attorney that's handling it right now, and whether it's a zoning ordinance or that he says that there's case law that shows that it would be grandfathered. Again, not a hill to die on. As the lawyer that has spoken with us has said, be involved, participate, and try to do this. STRs are not going to disappear. Nobody can make them disappear. We want to all have a working, functional thing that works well, and that we're working well together, not fighting each other. And I've never wanted to do that. I want to get on a hill and battle you guys. Nobody does. So that's kind of it. I just wanted to come in and give my feedback. I didn't want to be in the crowd and, nobody wants to bum rush me or whatever, whatever. I mean, I can handle it, but, I don't want to fight with somebody over these things. And if it comes to that, then lawyers will have to deal with that kind of stuff if it were to go there. I hope it doesn't. So, you know.
First of all, thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming in several times and your input and coming to
Yeah.
the meetings. No, it's great to have
The fact
feedback.
that you're coming to a
Absolutely.
meeting rather than just showing up at a meeting where everyone's yelling, because it's helpful to be able to have someone speak without all the yelling. I can say this just for me sitting on this board, we have not rushed into anything, and you know because you talked with us over a year ago, because I personally understand that people have a constitutional right to have their property, and as long as you're following Vermont state law, and as long as you're doing the things that aren't against the law, then everyone has a right to their home and what they're going to do with it. I mean, that's my personal, I'm not speaking for anyone else. And so because of that, I think we as a group though also have tried to be really cognizant of that. And so at this point, we don't have, I can say we, I think because we said it at the last meeting that you were at but didn't talk, we have not decided to do anything at all. The only thing that we are doing is putting it on the ballot so that if people wanted it to be under conditional use, then moving forward. But the minute it would be under conditional use, I think I'm right about this, Richard, it immediately then just falls into the zoning, right? That it's already under today in a way. So we want to have the whole of Andover kind of vote. How do they want us to move forward? I can say myself, I am not interested in, and have not been from the beginning and have said it, I'm not interested in this board just coming up with some, what's the word? Ordinance around this, or some big draconian kind of ordinance around that. And I think we've kind of made that really clear. Like, we want to give people the opportunity to vote on doing something, but we have no interest. I think I can speak for all of us, including Chris, who's not here, in doing that. And it's not just because, for me, I feel like people have a constitutional right to their property, right? So it's not just that, but it's also as some of the towns who jumped in the deep water and put that into place, and now you're saying they're getting, they're in court. And Andover is an awesome town and we love it, but we don't want to be in court over this. We don't want to spend money on this. So it's really, at this point, it's really what happens. It is, in the hands of the voters next week. As far as whether we do something or we don't do anything or whatever, we kind of are waiting on that.
Am I wrong in believing that this is an advisory vote? It's not actually, like, whether the town votes no or yes, I mean, ethically, I guess we want to do what the townspeople ask us to, but it's not actually written in stone. And we still have some
I think we have
really
a lot
big
looking
choices.
into, yeah,
We have a lot of,
how that
like, whether
takes place.
Right.
a possible conditional use would go with the property or go
Right.
with the
But we're
owner.
not even there.
But we're not even there, and
Because we
my
don't know
position
if the
is
town-
just totally that I would like to get. I'm just trying to get a survey of what the town wants,
Right.
and
It could be
I
that
don't
the
really
town
don't
says,
know what.
we don't want any of this to be under conditional use.
But if
And
they
if
say
that's-
it does, we still have. It's still not a straight path forward. There's still a lot. The devil is in the details with
Right.
it.
I think the other thing, and I didn't mention it, the other thing that is a little concerning to me, there was some discussion about enforcement. I know you guys are saying that, there's limited enforcement, if any at all. I would argue right now, you don't have a lot of enforcement other than maybe paperwork and sending a fine, and that could be difficult doing it. But there was a couple of the meetings, there was people saying, hey, if they're too loud, we're gonna go there, we're gonna file a complaint and try to handle it themselves, kind of vigilante kind of thing. I mean, anywhere I've been, and I might have brought this example up before, back where I am in Connecticut, they try to stop all riding dirt bikes on private property. And they use the noise ordinance as a way to do it. Now in Connecticut, it's a little different than Vermont, but in Connecticut, if you got the noise, you've gotta have the meter, you have somebody who's licensed to do the meter at the property line with the dirt bike running at the time. Now, lawyer I'm speaking to said it's a little different in Vermont, but basically it's the same idea. You gotta have the noise there, where's your noise meter? But Andover didn't have a noise ordinance.
Well, my thought is this. I would like to see people a little more friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see someone like yourself control your rental unit where people are just as if you were my next door neighbor.
Absolutely.
No different than my next door neighbor.
Absolutely.
I would like to see people being much more friendly as Andover has always been. Where you can knock on each other's door, where somebody could call you up and say, you know what, you had some wild renters there and can you quiet them down? Just like if I leave for the weekend and my kids throw a party at my house, that I would expect my neighbors would say, hey.
Like call and say, hey,
You know?
man, they were over the
They
top
were
this
over the
weekend.
top this weekend, you know? I would hope for that. That may be naive of me, but I would like to keep Andover that way. I would like to keep it so that people are cognizant of what's going on in their homes and that they're thinking about the neighbors. And you may not live here, but we do have people that do live here, and they do live here full time, and so they may not want, somebody whooping it up every single weekend. But at the same time, I feel strongly about people have the right to do what they want with their properties, as long as it's legal.
Right. And I appreciate that too. But in my case, I can speak for every STR out there. But in my case, I've got cameras everywhere. You can't be outside of my house, not inside, but outside. And I am very on top of all of that. And I might have told you the story when I was here last time. The biggest issue I've had is my neighbor comes over and walks my property when I'm not there. Now I see him on the camera. It's not a big deal, but I mean, he's coming into my property.
Right.
It's a little, it is what it is. But and I've had people there that have been noisy, and I'll threaten to kick them out, and there's rules, but everybody tries to control as best they can. But ultimately, if you have somebody there, it's no different. I've got 3 kids. It's no different. I can lecture them all day long, but if they want to just go do something and challenge my authority and do it, then I got to deal with the consequences. Just like a renter, which I had, goes out and wants to urinate off my porch. I mean, there's not much I can do in the moment.
Right.
I can never let them back. I can write up a bad review. I can tell them not to do that. But in the present moment, there's not a lot I can do about that. But, it happens. There's, bad apples in every batch. But I pay good attention to that. I know there's another newer STR up the road from me, and she's on top of it too. She says that she's just so instructed that she thinks she, drives people away. But she said they keep renting. And I said, well, there's nothing wrong with keeping an eye on your property. And I know I do it and some others do it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be a problem. But I agree with you. If the neighbor came over and said, "Hey, is this allowed?" But my hours are so much less, earlier than everything else than a lot of people do. But I just I lowered the amount that I let at the cabin now from where I was, just because I didn't want that many people in there anymore. So I lowered that, but it hasn't changed,
Right.
a lot. But
I think another interesting part of what Robin is saying too, or I should say this, is that there's always been a culture in Andover of people just really kind of, if they had, and I'm just going to use the terminology, if they had a beef with a neighbor for whatever reason, it was likely that they would just go and talk about it or get on the phone or even talk to somebody's uncle and say, hey, what's going on up there because of the blah, 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 and talk about it. But I think somehow or another, the short-term rental, particularly up in that area that you're in, it's not the only area, but particularly that area, you have short-term rentals, and then you have folks who are in Andover, but maybe were never part of that culture that she's talking about or I'm talking about. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's this adversarial thing that's happening, and we are very much stuck in the middle of it, kind of going, okay, well, we want everybody to be happy, but we also have to look at people's rights as well, right? Because as we said, and I say this, and I'm just going to say this, the net when people stand at that meeting and scream about the things we should do, what people forget is that when we take out a great big net like that and say, these are the new rules, and you start laying down all those rules, well, that's all fine and dandy until someone else wants to have a barbecue.
that's right.
You see? And so that lowers the kind of standard of what everybody can do in the town. So we're trying to be really cognizant of all of that. And it is difficult. It's difficult because it's become a lot of yelling. And so, but the thing is, the law is the law on top of that. And you can yell and scream all you want to at a meeting, but the law still washes out as the law. So with this vote that we put on the ballot, it's really for, we had said right along, we're not gonna go in and do all kinds of, rulemaking, just the five of us. But we want the town to say, vote on this. If you want us to look at it under the zoning, and the other thing is that conditional use, all of those short-term rentals, and every time that I've said this at a meeting, I've gotten yelled at. So, but I'm gonna say it here because I think you're not gonna yell. None of you are probably gonna yell at me, but every short-term rental, including Robin's house and every other house, mine, yours, they're all covered under all these laws in Vermont already, right?
Mhm.
So we're kind of looking at it too like that, you know what I mean? Like the state of Vermont, and here's the other thing, eventually the state of Vermont is gonna come up with some new laws around this. They will eventually. And so we're trying to be really fair, I think.
They've got another one that's perking right now, but that's doing the non-resident resident thing. And the lawyer that I was talking to, who happens to be involved in the legislature, said that that's probably not gonna make it because of the issue, the federal issue,
Yeah,
where the Interstate Commerce Clause doesn't allow you to treat a non-resident. And rightfully so. I mean, we mix between states.
right,
We're selling beef or,
yeah.
I think we've all said
Whatever.
that we weren't.
We can't do that.
We actually have never even
We have
discussed the
never-
resident.
Oh,
We
no,
actually,
no,
we did.
In the
We were
audience.
in the hosted and unhosted
right,
part, and we decided that a short-term rental is a short-term rental, whether it's hosted or unhosted, because everybody likes to compare to other towns. Andover's Andover. I don't really like comparing to even neighboring towns.
right.
That works for them, but I don't think it would work for our town. I can shed light on one of your questions or comments. What we've all sat here from the day we started. We've been looking at this going on 3 years, and the board before us.
Yeah.
So the fee generated from, now I'll have to say that it's just a number. We were given a quote years ago now that a company to look after a registry and check online and keep a tab was $11,000 for the size of the town we have with the short-term rentals. So there was going to be a place or hiring somebody to do it for the town. There was always going to be a cost because we don't have volunteers to do stuff.
No.
No. So that there was going to be a place for X number of dollars. And those numbers came up with that 11,000, I think, in that mind
Right.
of that's what it would cost to hire a subcontractor. And like I said, those figures are probably too old to say anything other than an estimate now.
And again, we're just taking it to the people to see what they want. This could get voted down.
Absolutely. And
It could
we
be-
just, our main concern is it doesn't become a burden on, like, this just doesn't become a budget line. There would have to be
Right.
some sort of way to balance. All we were looking for is a balance. There wasn't looking to be any more, but
And find out what people want.
Right.
What do our voters want? What would
Yeah.
they like to see? Do they want us to take this step or do they not?
Right.
And there are,
There's quite a few that don't.
Yeah.
There's quite
We're
a
gonna
few
find-
that
we're
just
gonna find out.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was brought to the table as just like this huge thing, like to go over and try to get past. And we decided to bring it back to base one and go from there rather than, you've probably been to some of those meetings. There's just so many things to go over. And one of the things that stuck out in my mind, which goes to what Robin and Melissa were saying, a longtime resident of Andover said, you have to be careful with regulations because once you start regulating something, they don't go away. It just mutates or transforms into more regulations. And that's really stuck with me personally. That changes a small town from not being a small town anymore.
That's
And that-
a bigger issue that
that-
I'm even thinking about, right?
That has really resonated
That's
with
where
myself
I
and
think with all of
stuck.
us.
Yeah.
Right. No, I
It's
agree.
stuck. And that's where I hit the brakes and I said, we really need to, and some people agree and some people don't. And I understand we're never going to find that point where everybody agrees. And like I said, I really appreciate your input and coming in to not just the hearings.
And I would say this too, talking with people and asking people's opinions about this vote that's coming up, just to say, do they want it under conditional use or not? There are a lot of people who don't want anything
They don't
done.
want to do anything.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who want nothing
Right.
done. They just want it to stay as it is and let the state regs cover it and just not make all of this whatever.
There are also a lot of people who want an ordinance and are opposed to conditional use. So that's why I have no grasp on how the town will vote because somebody could vote against the conditional use, but they might be extremely interested in ordinances. We don't know, so this is kind of our
But
first
we have
shot in the
said
dark.
that we are, well, I'll go step back to what I have said from the very beginning, is that I personally, I would not make any decisions without bringing things to the town.
Yeah,
Because
we were
I
all
feel
very
really
clear about
strongly
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
you guys said it from the
I
very
wanna hear,
beginning.
because
I
there are
appreciate
some
that.
people that would
Yeah.
like us to just
Not
write
that
up an
I-
ordinance and this is what we
Right.
do.
Right.
Because we can do that.
Right.
I just don't feel with this short-term rental, I personally don't think that that's the right way I would wanna go, but
We're going to get the voice of the town
We're
in
gonna get
8
voice.
days from now to see what direction they want us to move in as a board.
What do
On
you
the
have,
short
600 people in this town about? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Five.
5, but not everybody votes.
And then
yeah.
with the voting, and you're gonna
400
get
voters.
Yeah. So it's a pretty decent
You're gonna get what?
percentage.
50 to 75 people to vote. That'll do the vote.
No.
No, the
it'll be
vote
400.
that's on the paper ballot.
That's on the paper
So
ballot.
that'll
The next day.
that's not voted from the floor. We voted on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, it's not
that'll be a
voted from
paper
the
ballot, so.
Yeah.
It'll be on the ballot
But
on
it'll
Tuesday.
be, but they come in on Tuesday, or does it?
All the way
Either
till
they will or they won't.
you can you could have got a mail-in one if you asked for
Oh,
one,
God.
correct?
Yes.
If you're a
That's
resident.
not me, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's a whole. nother
So
argument.
it's open next Tuesday till 7.
But you know, when I came, and I'll get out of your way because I know you got to do it in business. When I came the first time, I said it, and I still feel it, but I know it's tough in the environment of the government, if you will. I still think in the atmosphere of what you're talking about with Andover being small town, neighbors talking to each other, and I'll just say this, and I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but this is just what you guys had a meeting a little while ago, and you guys were talking about FEMA issues and all the stuff with money and all that. And, I know it's a big load with the numbers that you're looking at. Now, this is no big deal and it actually doesn't matter, but in that same vein, I said, you know what? I can send my taxes early, then get the money here and send them before March 1st. How can I help out? And that's the only thing I thought that I could do. Other than if I was a multimillionaire, I could write you a big check. But I just said, I'll send my check in. And that's why I did that, because I feel that and I get that. I like the small town thing. And that's why we came where we are. In the same way, I wish we could work something out on the short-term renter thing, where it's off the books, you work out a fee, and you don't have to go through all this rigmarole. But I understand that's not how it goes. So,
Yeah.
Kind of the local thing. Hey, we're not gonna fight about it. We don't need to make ordinances or this or that or whatever. But we've got a registry to come up. We come up with a fee of whatever. Everybody's good on that. They pay it every year and we have no problems with our short-term renters. But I know that would be difficult from a legality standpoint.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I like that thought of that. It won't happen, but my biggest concern is just as one person is the louder voices getting the position of do this, don't allow them this, don't allow that, and that becomes where the push goes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that forces
I think
our
we've been
hand,
very
my hand.
careful with that,
Right,
not
right,
to
right,
do that.
right.
I think we have, and I hear you.
Mhm.
But I do think that we as a board have been very careful to know that the audience that's there is not necessarily the entire audience that we're needing to
That
listen
audience
to.
though could make a motion from the floor, right? Under your rules, if they wanted to, they could make some motion from the floor to turn that into a zoning or.
No, it has to, the articles that are voted on have to be warned. So a motion can be made for another person to be appointed to the select board because that's on the,
Right.
but everything that is warned can be
They
discussed.
couldn't do that on the on
No.
the 4th
No.
or the 5th.
No.
A motion can be made for something that's on the agenda.
Because there's been some whisperings about some of that trying to.
There will be discussion, but
No.
that's on the discussion, I
Well, if you
believe.
have a small enough group, and I didn't know what your things are, if you have a certain percentage of that, you can make a motion and then turn that into
No,
law,
Yeah.
ordinance, whatever. Okay.
The floor votes are more for the town meeting day and the town positions.
Okay.
I think, there's a lot of offensive yelling at the meetings, but I think most people who've been in Andover for a while understand who the
Absolutely.
people are, and they're not really gonna be swayed by them.
Do we have any other discussion on STRs for?
I appreciate you guys' time.
The next line on the agenda is the finances. I mean, if you want, we do appreciate you coming in. If you are headed out, thank you. But I think that was any input continuing from the hearing before.
No, I don't think we
Voting.
have anything. No, we're just moving
Okay.
to that vote.
So we'll move on to the loan update and town finance
You all have a
update.
good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
So the loan, so that's the code for the loan from the Vermont Bond Bank, and their timeline is the same as it was last time. They, as far as we know, and I had asked Kelly Payala about this to confirm, and she was gonna check and see if she could understand why it's taking until March 11th for them to be making any decisions. I haven't heard any more about that. I think I told you last time we met that our category B emergency stuff that was done for the flood, which was the first 2 or 3 days, and Middletown Road have been what's called obligated. So what that meant is they made it all the way through the pipeline, and then the paperwork was just sitting with the state of Vermont to write the grant agreement. And I signed the grant agreement a week ago Friday. So we, depending on how long it takes them to deposit money into our bank account, we at least are looking at $55,000 fairly soon.
And that's A and B.
No, we've put aside category A. So that was category B, which was the emergency work done in the first few days, and for Middletown Road. So every road, if it meets the minimum threshold of $3,800, is its own separate project. So Middletown Road was the first project that I did last October.
Wow.
We are waiting on a hydraulic study for 2 culverts on Schmidt Road that did not get done, and no one seemed to know that we needed them until the time came for FEMA to say, hey, do you have hydraulic studies for these? So we have to backtrack with Schmidt Road, which is, I had submitted, I think, about $200,000 for just Schmidt Road. So that one, Hector's working on the paperwork. And we're trying to get some things going while we wait. It's gonna be a couple of months before we get those hydraulic studies, which is just with everything else disappointing that we got to this point and now it's on hold. Lovejoy Brook Road is the third one. He has pushed that past himself onto his supervisor. So hopefully that will get some traction fairly soon because that's another $100,000 project. Hector is working on, I've submitted everything for Hilltop Road and Howard Hill. He's working on those. I had to combine 4 roads because it wasn't until 2 meetings ago that we were told that there was a minimum threshold per road, so, which is fine. I mean, you have to do the work on each road anyway. So we've combined 4 roads that had just a low amount of expenses into one project. Everything's been submitted for Weston Andover Road because that comes under the federal highway program. Those expenses are coming directly from the state. FEMA is not involved with that. They seem to be further along in the process of going through our paperwork than FEMA is, maybe because they're just fewer layers, I'm not sure. But I mean, that road was, because of the paving that had to get done, that whole thing was $225,000. So if that one comes sooner rather than later, that would be huge to get that money, which would be very nice. We have heard, and I think we've all talked about this before, so far, we are only getting 75% reimbursement, but the state is also giving us 12.5% of the 25% that we are supposed to come up with, so that's getting us closer. I think the state is still confident that once they see all these obligated projects and see the grand total, that we're gonna meet the threshold to get 100% reimbursement. I think it was the president and then Governor Scott did agree to give 100% in category A and category B things that were within certain dates. So we're eligible for some of that on our category B, but it really didn't make that much of a difference because overall our category B was, the date they chose to start that they said they would cover 100% of was July 13th, and more than half of our category B came between July 11th, July 10th, and July 12th. So most of our category B stuff isn't eligible for 100% because it came sooner than they said it could, which makes no sense to me because the reason we were paying money is because we had flood damage. So anyway, but so that was really good news. We also, I don't know if you're familiar with the grants and aid program. So there are all kinds of things that the road crew has to do to the ditches to be in compliance. So every summer, we work with the Regional Planning Commission to identify ditches that need to be brought up to those standards. And you've seen where the work has been done, and you've seen it in other towns. It's everywhere you see those big gray rocks. That's the kind of ditching and clean out, and then those kinds of rock, that rock goes in there. We get reimbursed up to a certain amount for doing that. So Charlie and I busted out the paperwork for the 22-23 ditching, and we just got that money today, and that was $16,000. So that was a nice thing to see in the bank account when I opened it this morning. So all good news. And as Mr. Gibson said, I mean, he's certainly not the only one who's, I mean, everybody's paying their taxes. March 1st is right around the corner, but you know, people have been good about sending it in. And so our school district bill is paid. So that's good. We'll have another one due in April, but we will have the money for that. And then it'll just be a matter of that loan and reimbursement from FEMA to help us pay the education tax bill to the state in June. And that one's $795,000.
Yay.
And we're still, because of having spent $500,000 out of the general fund specifically, I mean, we're still operating almost $300,000 in the red on budget. And that won't change until we get some of these big road projects reimbursed, realistically.
Hopefully that loan,
Yeah.
hopefully
Thank
that
you.
loan goes through for at least that much.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
That would be the big thing. You know, we can do everything else if we just could get the loan, because I would anticipate using the loan just to pay our education tax bill, so that's
Done.
right. And then the other money can trickle in, and it's not so urgent because we do have enough to kind of keep us going.
The only thing
So it's big.
alarming I read, and it might not be the same, as there's only like 16 million available. Is that anything that you've seen, that there's
I
a
haven't
certain
seen
amount
that,
of
but it's-
money, and then if you think about how many towns are affected, it'd be,
Right.
I hope that's not the only amount that's available, but I guess it would make a difference for a lot of towns, including ours. But, so,
Well, and you know, we asked for the full amount that was spent just to see. And
Yeah.
if we can't get that, any amount
any.
would be a help, just to get us through until all of these road projects get pushed through FEMA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Jeanette. A lot of work on your plate.
I know.
Thank you.
Cybersecurity.
All town equipment is in the building.
Well,
Awesome.
great.
So we have everything, and if we were to have someone kind of look at the systems and suggest some kind of, you know, anti-spyware or something like that, I would also probably have that person take a look at the computers themselves. I
Right.
think the last one, the oldest one that just got returned, I think is super old.
If it's worth it, is there
Well,
saying,
what I suspect is that it should be cleaned out and then recycled, probably.
I was gonna ask about that.
I
but-
think it's like
right.
a Windows 7 operating system, and yeah, it's not safe, and you can't get enough upgrades to make it safe.
very outdated.
Yeah.
But it does need to be cleaned out prior
Correct.
to.
Before
Yes,
it would
and that's
leave.
my concern is I would want someone who knows how to do that to
Right.
make sure before it goes anywhere. So I don't know whether you
That's
want to
great.
just wait. We did have that gentleman from Brandon who had given a quote on coming and spending just a couple of hours to kind of do that. I don't know if you guys want to look at that, or do you want to wait till after town meeting, or?
I would say wait until after
Mhm,
town
yeah.
meeting. That would be my, what do you think?
I say wait too.
Yeah, we can add that to the agenda for the next meeting's after town meeting, so we can, and I mean, at least move forward with getting that one taken care of if it's outdated and it's gotta be
Recycled properly.
correct.
Right, and cleaned out.
So that's.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
And the minutes, both sets of minutes are in there.
I wasn't there, so I'm not gonna say that. The big meeting.
Oh, we missed it, Susan.
That's not the payment for the loader, right?
Yes,
That one?
that was the first
That is
payment
just
for the
a-
loader. That's the
That's
first
for
payment.
the 7. Yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry. I think I had a different figure in my head, but yes.
The next payment will be, I don't wanna say 65.
That's what I was thinking.
1,000.
So the first
But I-
payment was all.
I
Is it
think
because it's yearly or something?
well, or if the first installment takes into account the trade or something.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah, something was proactive
Yeah.
or prorated or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was thinking that the number was higher than that, and it wasn't. Now this here we already signed.
Yeah, that's all, you can just leave that.
Just leave that in there. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. Is there any correspondence?
There's a letter from the Vermont Journal just giving us a quote for being our paper of record, if you wanna take a look. We've been using them, we also, as we have talked about in the past, and it's up to you guys, but usually we use them in conjunction with the Telegraph, just to make sure that all bases are covered for people who might not have access to that paper for some reason, or who prefer to use an online media.
Yeah, we've been over that because you can just use the one, but we decided
Yeah,
in,
both.
in the past to use
Yeah,
both.
because
Yeah.
a lot of people online are looking at the Telegraph.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who go away in the winter too.
We can entertain a motion on if we want to continue to use.
Is that something we do now, or do we wait until the next
do it now.
board?
It kind of
It's to continue, because we're using it at this moment. It would be to continue.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, that's a good point, Robin. I hadn't thought of that. Is there might be a different group of you around the table in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks, and maybe you want to wait until there's a potential, if in case there are any people. Is that what you were saying?
I don't see any harm
No,
in
I
waiting,
don't think, well,
but I mean, I think.
I was just asking, do we wait until the next meeting?
It will stay in the correspondence folder if no motion's made to,
Right.
it would just be next agenda, or next
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do it as part of the organizational meeting next time.
I just thought a date is March, is when it's up, so that's why, that's the only reason, not because of a new board, I was just thinking. Yeah.
Sorry.
As a select board of Andover requested the following Vermont Journal proposal for legal and help
March.
wanted from the year of 2024 through March of 2025.
Right, that's.
So
the
it
only
would
reason I waited
start-
until-
Yeah, so I guess it is a,
That makes sense.
That was the only reason I mentioned it, not because of the new board, so, I mean, I would vote on it now or later, doesn't make a difference.
I don't see that it's an issue one way or another. It just, and if she had to put something in the paper from now until that meeting, if it was in March, they may say, that's the only thing. I don't see
Well,
any,
they won't refuse to
yeah,
put
they
it
just
in.
bill it.
They just like to, I mean, they give us a slightly better deal when we call them our paper of record.
Okay, so
So should we vote on it? Then
Yeah,
we will.
I move that we vote to do that, yes.
I second it.
all those in favor?
Aye.
That is all of the agenda.
That's it.
I move that we, I was gonna say discontinue. and
Adjourn.
Adjourn the meeting. I almost said discontinue.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.